the Northwest home for paranormal, you're listening to U.S. Phenomenon with your host, Mario Magana.
It all began on a drive home from Swing Shift. The radio, my only companion. The voice of the legendary Art Bell filled the room. Well, filled the car. A beacon in the darkness, speaking worlds beyond our own. Stories untold, secrets kept just out of sight. That voice, those tales ignited a spark within me, a drive to seek the truth, explore the phenomenon that lie just beyond the edge of reason. From whispers of paranormal echoes of the unknown, my quest began. So, fellow night travelers, let's continue this journey, delve into the enigmas of nights, and uncover the mysteries that await us. This is U.S. Phenomenon. The search for the answers never ends. The adventure is just beginning. It is my pleasure to talk about something that we haven't talked about here, but it is my pleasure to welcome to U.S. Phenomenon. Let me put is Charlotte and Phil. Now, Phil and Charlotte have been doing, I want to say, some stuff that you guys have been working together for quite some time. We've had you on the radio show way back to talk about the incident on Maury Island, which is always a fun tale to talk about. Now, the reason why I wanted to bring you guys on was we had a listener send us an email asking us to cover Mel's Hole. Now, for those who don't know anything about Mel's Hole, this story goes back to February of 1997 on Art Bell's show back in the day, where Mel Waters called in, or he actually faxed Art Bell the story about what he had discovered in this hole. Before we have you guys come on, let's play a little bit of this audio from Mel's Hole here. Where did it go? Oh no, where did it go? Mel's Hole. There it is. Here we go. Here's the audio.
I guess this is Eastern Washington. Mel, are you there?
Yes, I am.
First of all, Mel, thank you for answering. What are you doing up at this time of the morning?
Well, after I sent the fax, I'm living in town here now because we had a couple of our buildings out there cave in after the big snows that we had out here last month.
Oh, yes.
And so thereby goes some of the construction debris into the hole. So,
all right. When did you discover this hole?
Well, the hole has always been there. We've been out there for a couple of years now, and the hole has been there since we've been there. It's been there since the previous owner was there, and the previous owner there was quite elderly, and I'd say he was there for a good 30, 40 years before we moved in.
Wow.
It's interesting to me, you guys, when we talk about this hole here, or Mel talks about the hole, and he goes to Art Bell to share this news about this. I don't want to know if it's mysterious phenomenon of a hole. Now, when did you guys start doing your guys' research on this hole?
Well, I guess like yourself, we had heard the story, and I guess because it was of our close proximity to it, at some point, we, I guess, decided to actually do an expedition and go out there and just kind of research around. But it was, another local person by the name of Red Elk, who showed us kind of what he believed was the gate or the trailhead to what he believed was Mel Hole's area.
And see, when we talk about Charlotte and Phil, who you guys run the website nwlegendmuseum.com. So when people want to go somewhere to talk, if it's about Mel's Hole, or you guys have a ton of stuff out there, but so tonight we'll spend most of the time talking about Mel's Hole, but you guys used to have a location that's no longer there, right? You guys don't have the museum because the pandemic? Is that what happened?
Well, we just kind of retired. I think it was about 2013. We did have a physical location
Yeah,
for about 10 years, and then we kind of retired, and we just still just have our website up.
We still
that's
do
perfect.
ghost tours.
Yeah, no, perfect. Now you can't actually you can go to Mel's Hole, but you can't actually go onto the property right now. I know there's so many legendary stories that talk about that the military or the government is on the property now. How is that? I haven't been out there, so what have you guys come across on your guys' travel there?
Well, okay, again, we've been out there maybe about 4 times, um, around 2000 and through maybe 2002, and um, there's a lot of features that Mel mentions that we believe he actually did live in Ellensburg on the Manastash Ridge. There's no question about that. Mel was a real person. It wasn't just a story.
Sure,
Um, and we can't necessarily prove any of the unusual paranormal qualities of the region or the whole, but for us, there's no doubt that there's a person um, who did live, in the area because there's just too many things he's mentioned that actually, we verified. Um, it, um, I kind of recommend going out there for anyone who's interested. It's just a nice little town, but um, we believe kind of it's possible the whole may be covered over.
sure.
I don't think there's an obvious huge military presence that would just be, you know, red flagging and just drawing attention to themselves. But Manastash Ridge is a very kind of it's still kind of a high desert kind of woodsy ridge, next to Ellensburg, Washington. So uh,
It's a scenic area. It's really nice.
It's funny because looking at the map earlier, I was looking for it just now as you guys were just chatting. Um,
yeah.
the map on Google Earth shows the hole on Google Earth still, and it looks like the threshold of like Thorpe, right? And kind of that Thorpe, Ellensburg ish area, off of 90. So somewhere in that area. Well, I mean that's still Ellensburg.
Well, again, we don't know who put that. We just now recently noticed. Yes, if you go on Google Maps and look for Ramel's Hole, there actually is a placement, and the there may be more than several, and we can verify that or anything. But we noticed there is a Mel's Hole designation south of town, south of Ellensburg. Um, I want to say kind of southeast of the ridge, which may or may not be part of the ridge. Again, we haven't been out there for years to necessarily verify that, and again, we don't know who placed that mark.
Marker.
Yeah.
See, that's interesting because when you start looking at this, if you're watching the stream here, and I'm like designating, trying to find Mel's Hole, as we do this. Okay, so if you're watching the stream, you can see it, but it's designated off of. I mean, I'm gonna pull this map all the way
Mhm.
out, but I mean, Ellen, you look at this map and you're like, okay, there's 90, but that area is definitely desert, right? And
Well,
this area,
okay, is that it? Does that look like it? Um, that looks like it's north of town. Now, what's interesting is years ago we did connect with Jack Powell, who's with the Department of Natural Resources, and he led us to a gold mining pit just north of Ellensburg. Okay, it's not on Manastash Ridge. Um, that does go down 300 feet. Um, it's just off of the road. We believe it is on private property now. That's been known, but we do not believe that is the same thing as Mel's Hole. That mining pit north of Ellensburg is kind of called Green Canyon Mining Shaft. We have information in it and an actual photo of it um, on our website. And again, I think people would like to think Mel was confused and, he was simply referring to that mining pit as his hole. But you'll notice that hole does not have a 3 foot high retaining wall around it. Mel claimed that the hole on his property had a 3 foot high stone retaining wall, and the stone went down about 15 feet. Um, so again, this may be just an example of how there's a lot of what do you call
Different story. Yeah.
yeah,
Encounters or
and
like description. Yeah.
yeah, you want to be careful because there are mining shafts out there. I mean, all over the Northwest. Um, and you just want to be careful. This Green Canyon mining shaft does have a very small fence around it to keep cattle out. But again, we do not believe it's, Mel's Hole.
When Mel Waters called Art Bell back in the day, and he talked about what then was how much fish line that he put down
Mhm.
the alleged hole. I think it was he said something about measuring
80,000.
80,000 is now.
Yeah.
And the other story that it just blows my mind to think that how is this not been researched by geologists as could this have been, you know, like an extinct volcano? Could this have,
Yeah.
could, these types of things run through my head when you think 80,000 feet. I was like, damn, that's a lot. That's a really large hole. Now, the other legendary story or myth that was talked about was that Mill had brought up on the show was that something that his neighbor's dog had, passed away. He didn't want to bury it, and he ended up putting the dog down the hole. Now, I think if it was me, I would probably bury my, deceased dog. But the legendary story talks about how the dog came back to the owner alive after the dog had passed away. Now, have you heard it? I mean, that to me seems very strange. And some of the other encounters that I've read and heard of was that area seems to have this aura or phenomenon feel to it, where time seems to be almost like bending time, where it either slows it down or picks it back up. In your guys' research so far, what have you come across?
Um, quite frankly, and again, we've been out there 4 times, and um, if you do a little bit of research on Ellensburg, there are some interesting aspects to it, and I encourage yourself and your listeners to take a vacation and go out there, and there are hiking trails on Manastash Ridge. Um, the the is again a beautiful, varied area. The unique geological thing we do know, and again, this is getting with the Department of Natural Resources, and you can look, anywhere. That region and area is known for a kind of a rare agate. It's called Ellensburg Blue, and from my understanding, it's only found in 2 places around the world, and you can be walking around and find it. And if you do find one, pick it up because my understanding is a little bit valuable. Um, but that just kind of speaks to how geologically unique that area is. And what we've also researched and found out is Manastash Ridge is on the edge of an ancient oceanic plate. And that's why we thought, okay, Mel's Hole is simply a volcanic vent hole or just something, again, unique. Central Washington is
Right.
very interesting. Yeah. And uh, so we've got kind of a rare agate. We've got there's still a lot of gold mining going on out there. And just north of Ellensburg, around kind of an area called Liberty, you do find what we, I think geologists called steam vent holes. There is maybe some volcanic activity that is still kind of going on underneath in that area.
Ugh,
And so,
it gives me the chills.
yeah, I mean, you could go there for a variety of reasons, but again, this kind of all involves some of the research in the area. Now, there's again, it's a beautiful hiking area. Mel related some artifacts that he found on his property and around the hole, and some mysterious things that kind of, again, we can't verify or anything like that. He found an old German P-38 gun that he gave to his landlord. His landlord actually, I think, went on Art Bell and mentioned that it didn't make a sound when he fired it at a firing range. And again, we don't know why, but Mel also mentioned he found some mysterious dimes on his property that were minted before the Treasury formally released coins, and just kind of some anomalies he kept mentioning.
Our guests tonight, Charlotte and Phil, who are hanging out with us, their website, nwlegendsmuseum.com. We'll have a link posted within the podcast or the video stream as well. What's interesting to me when we talk about these anomalies, the coin, these different pieces. Now, have you heard about the radio story that was brought that Mel could turn on a radio, but he would hear programming that came to be of late 40s vintage records being played over the air, which wouldn't be typically found during that this time of day unless he was maybe listening to some old records. But he said he had tried to turn the radio to a different frequency and came across a play-by-play of a 19-something ball game of older players, and clearly, obviously, this being the 97, roughly 2000, somewhere in this time frame. We're talking that Mel Waters was able to play a radio and then hear audio that was from back in the day. So almost like a glimpse of time travel to present day. I think I saw that somewhere, but I wasn't sure if you guys heard that story as well.
I think we've heard all the stories.
Almost. And again, we can't really comment on that, but that's kind of it seems kind of the theme that he mentions a lot. There's just some little unusual things that don't work normally around the area where he was living.
There was a whole Mel's Hall forum for quite a while where all we did was discuss where it is and all the phenomena.
Yeah,
it's interesting. It's interesting as you're talking about that, Phil. This is probably the biggest thing, and I always say this about the Pacific Northwest. We have to be the largest capital for paranormal activity, from the incident at Maury Island, the UFO sightings at Mount Rainier, Mel's Hole, DB Cooper. I mean, the list goes on. I'm tired. Like, we need to make the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, this area needs to be the new Roswell. And that is my mission, is to say that this is where it's at. Because there's so much going on here. That's a huge phenomenon. Okay, there's a desert and you got some alien trinkets going on, and maybe there was a discovery of islands, but that didn't happen until after the Maury Island incident, So I always have to remind people, like, maybe it was the people on Vashon Island and Maury Island. They're like, well, we don't really want to, we don't want to cash in on this one. But hey, when you see guys in black suits hey, you're like, well, maybe we'll just be quiet. We'll just mind our own business over here, you know? So I have to say that this has to be one of my other favorite all-time stories. And I really thank a listener who sent us an email asking us to talk about Mel's Hole. And I was like, I got to get to this one. And for you guys to come back on to chat about this one, it's always fun to have you guys on to discover and to talk about these different things that you guys have, you know, been doing research on, and just the passion to have, you know, someone to come on the radio to talk about Mel's Hole, or if it's the DB Cooper case, or you know, the Maury Island incident. To get back to the hole, the mystery hole. What's interesting in your guys' and research on, you know, these different forms and whatnot, is there anything that stands out to you guys that isn't been mentioned, or in that has been mentioned but not been brought to the light to maybe the average listener or person who may be doing research on
Yeah,
Mel's?
there's two things, but there is one thing I want to mention to you and your listeners, that you can actually go to Ellensburg and actually see and touch this anomaly. Mel one time related that there was a whale bone embedded in a tree on 4th Avenue. And we actually inquired about that and was directed to it. And yes, indeed, you can even look it up online. There's newspapers that have done articles on it. There actually is a whalebone embedded in a tree on 4th Avenue. Now, that might not be too mysterious, given it might have been a fisherman who simply propped it up on a young tree, and the the tree grew up around the whalebone. But it's a huge. Somebody mentioned it's the jawbone of a whale, and it's an actually, it looks like a large limb. Um, and that, just so you know, is one aspect of Mel's story again, that you can actually go and see and touch it, and it's real. Again, unusual, perhaps explainable, but again, it's just kind of an unusual aspect of, and it's again something maybe we verified that, yeah, he actually told something, a story about something that actually exists, and you can go there and check it out yourself.
It's funny for those who haven't listened to the story or the original audio, and it's funny because when I tell the intro of someone who listened to Art Bell, who wasn't on the radio back then, nor was I was working at Boeing at the time, driving home from swing shift, and this is definitely what's funny is the research shows that it happened February 21st, 1997, which
Mhm.
was my birthday.
Oh,
I wasn't working at Boeing just yet, so I hadn't come across this piece because I didn't start working at Boeing until 97 of September. So it was my birthday. I wish what an interesting tie to the whole story. But so for me, I guess it really touches because I was like, oh, this happened on my birthday, 1997. When I listened to Art and listened to Mel Waters, to me, it doesn't sound like he's pulling anyone's leg. I think he's just genuinely
Well,
being honest about what his discovery was about this, from this hole, this mysterious hole that he found in his backyard, and that he started doing, you know, his own research with, you know, putting, you know, fish line and then you know, weight to it, and you know, pulling it back up and trying to figure out if there was water in this hole, and you know, the different stories of that have been also. I don't know if it was Mel Waters had actually, you know, they didn't, the story that is out there, I don't know if it's true or not, about them putting you know, putting livestock down there and then bringing it back up,
mhm.
and that's the unfortunate part, because a part of that, you know, that piece, if that is true, unfortunately the livestock passed away. I don't know, lack of oxygen or, you know, whatever the case may be. I didn't, the story that was told through whatever I had found through those channels stated I didn't actually finish watching the show because I was like, I need to stop. So I just need to listen to others and let you guys share your stories and what you guys' research has come across. But he didn't to me sound like he was trying to pull anyone's, trying to
He
pull
has,
anyone's leg or
he
pull a
has
fast.
nothing to sell. There's no, people can't even. There's nothing to sell or buy or anything.
Yeah,
There's
I
no
mean,
money for him.
right. I mean, for him, he was just explaining it, and then for the discovery of AB to actually have to find him, because everyone had been, when he come on the show, there were all these fake faxes, and because that's how he said, hey, I faxed on blah 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 blah. But he finally got a hold. Art finally got a hold of the gentleman, and then the story becomes the legend, because now here we are, 2024, still talking about this whole the discoveries. Could this have been? I know this. I mean, it's not Yakima. I mean,
Right.
it's Ellensburg more, but is it part of a tribal? Was this part of a tribe of some sort, of a community that may not be there anymore? Or have you guys had any
Well,
research into that piece?
um, again, we believe it or not, um, when we first got contacted by Red Elk, interestingly, we were informed about him through one of our colleagues, Peter Davenport, if you're familiar,
Yeah, yeah,
with the National UFO Reporting Center.
yeah.
I guess everybody is familiar with Art Bell's radio show, and I guess Red Elk had contacted Davenport, and he referred Red Elk to us, and of course we connected. We actually went out there. Um, there is no, my understanding, no Native American tribe specifically around there, but Mel Waters was working with Native Americans, particularly on one other aspect that you and your listeners may not be aware as much. If you listen to a lot of the audio archives of Mel Waters, you'll notice he's really talks a lot about this Native American plant that he's cultivating. Um, Mel Waters, a lot of people don't realize, was um, he had throat cancer, and I believe he knew his health wasn't the best, and for him it was really important that he help his Native American friends, um, and the development of this medicinal plant. Now, interestingly, this plant, um, it's called Lomatium dissectum, and interestingly, it was used um, during the 1918 influenza
Okay.
successfully, and it's an herb that you can get right now in most herb stores. It's called Lomatium, and it's a very strong um, herbal um, medicine, if you will. And for him, you have to understand it was more important for him to talk about that and to even maybe protect its development. And so, anybody can kind of look up Lomatium dissectum. It's also called desert parsley or biscuit root. And it was so strong, believe it or not, even the Native Americans used to go fishing with it. They'd submerge the root in like a pond or water, and it was so strong it would stun the fish. So
Interesting.
this isn't just a little innocent plant or anything. It was a very strong medicine, and again, with his condition, you have to understand. Uh, it was very important that he kind of protect, I think, that area. And so, um, given, I think, during our last expeditions, we kind of thought, well, the hole's probably covered over, and um, you know, it's we also wanted to, with due respect, kind of make sure that, if his property or anything would come under, um, further attention or seizure, that may interrupt the lomatium dissectum development. Um, we, I guess we just kind of thought, well, if something develops in the future, we'll hear about it. But we actually do believe the hole exists. Mm-hmm.
Our guest tonight, Charlotte and Phil from NW. Did I get that right? Yes, right. NW.
Museum of Legends and Lore. Uh-huh.
Yeah. It's interesting because when we talk about this herb that he had, from the stories that were told, he was cured, right? Is that what the doctor said? That he had so much time to live and that some mysterious outcome prevailed to show that he was cancer free. Is that correct?
Yeah. Again, we got some brief emails from Mel and some brief emails from his nephew, Lewis. And Lewis, I think in an email mentioned that in one of his last checks up with the doctor, and I want to quote him, he said, quote, Mel was cancer free. And this was quite, it was great to hear because I think in some of the previous comments that Lois detailed that, again, he had esophageal cancer, a throat cancer or something, to the point that a lot of his pills, fragments of the pills or medicine, whatever he was taking, was actually getting caught in his throat.
Oh.
And, I'd like to sit there and think, if you listen to Mel early on and maybe later on, his last programs, he might sound better. He was, pretty interesting. And, of course, he went on to relate a second hole that he had found in Nevada. And again, quite a story. Kind of bizarre. And how we sit there and say, but there's there is a connection. It may sound odd and bizarre, but there actually is a connection between the Manastash Ridge hole, and it's more so to do with the Native American plant and the Nevada hole. And we just became aware, again, there's been an upsurge in interest in Mel's hole. I want to say more so, it seems, for us in the last month.
It's interesting you say that again.
Partially because of that show we mentioned.
Sure. So there's a show that for all those who aren't listening or watching, as we were having a brief conversation before we started about the uptick that you guys were sharing about a documentary or a docu-series, or is it a television series on?
It's fictional.
It's fictional. Okay.
Yeah.
So
but we think it's based on Mel's hole.
And this is on Netflix now.
No, it's on Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime. Well, one of those.
Yeah. We believe it is a TV series, essentially. It's a series on Amazon Prime, and it's called Outer Range. And I guess
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh, and I guess it came out a couple of years ago, and I think this month they're going to be starting the second season. But we were just actually pretty amazed how close the story is to Mel's hole. Outer Range is about a rancher who has what appears to be a bottomless pit on his property. He's in a rodeo town, same as Ellensburg, There's a belt buckle in that TV series. Of course, there's a Native American influence. There's even buffalo in that series, which is there's a buffalo ranch, believe it or not, next to Manastash Ridge, and Mel actually liked buffalo. Um, and there's a couple. There really is some kind of couple references. I mean, for us, it's rather obvious that um, the series was pretty much inspired by the story of Mel's Hole. There's no doubt. Again, um, actor Josh Brolin stars in it, and he himself runs across anomalous objects.
It's interesting. It's interesting that, after the pandemic, how a lot of these stories have been redeveloped. I don't want to say have come back to the surface. Mel's Hole, maybe it's the DB Cooper. There was one that was they did a full docu-series on them. I was like, can't you just do this show in like 1 hour? You mean you need 4 episodes to do this docu-series? And so everyone came to me and said, "You watch?" And I said, "Yeah." I got mad because, according, this is one my daughter loves the most, is she believes that DB Cooper was Richard McCoy. She's like, no, it's got to be Richard McCoy. Now that's who she thinks it is. Okay. She's going to turn 16. She's not much of a conspiracy junkie, but that is one that she believes. And we watch, she goes, right, they got it on this whole.
Remind me if Richard McCoy was a suspect who had blue eyes. You can sit there and tell your daughter that without a doubt, DB Cooper had dark eyes.
Okay.
We know that because we heard that firsthand from FBI agent
Ralph Himmelsbach.
Ralph Himmelsbach, who we invited. This was years ago to our museum. So there's a couple.
All right, I'll tell her that.
Clues that we still have under our hats, that even the FBI has under their hats, that help them kind of sort out who's a suspect and who's not. Sure. Now, your daughter sounds like she might be a good investigator, though.
Yeah, that'd be true. So if we ever have time, like this summer, maybe we'll go do some boots on the ground. And what's interesting to go back. And we've been to Ellensburg many of times, and either on our way to concerts or whatever, we'll stop by. Yeah. Typically, we'll stop in Ellensburg to grab something to eat, and then we push forward all the way out to the gorge. Now, that whole area, including this piece here, when we talk about what is the mysterious hole that allegedly could be 80,000 feet deep, possibly. Now, there are scientific people have come and done their supposedly have done their research on this. What's interesting to me when you think about or talk about this, and I go back to, and I'm trying to find this this piece that I had that I pulled up just a moment ago about the hole, that they said the line, the science behind it said there's no way that the line would have snapped if it was 80,000 feet, blah, blah, blah. And what's interesting to me, the naysayers versus, what's out there. I think what to me I find interesting about this hole is that if what was, allegedly told back in the day about this hole was taken over by some type of government agency to secure the hole, the stories, the legendary stories of what's either the dog that came back to life or these beams of light that have come out of the hole. Now, when you talk to the Native American's name again, I forget.
Oh, Red Elk.
Mm-hmm. Red Elk. Now, his stories that I've seen online are just inspiring. I mean, because he too also shares some really rich knowledge about the area. What were your guys' encounters with him?
Well, okay. So again, years ago when we first met Red Elk, he took us to a trailhead that he best remembers when his father showed him the hole years ago when he was young, and of course he wasn't interested in any holes, and he claims he um, was looking down on it, like maybe he was on a ridge and he was looking at it from a higher elevation, and when his dad pointed it out to him. Now he simply led us to the gate of the trailhead. And he, again, Manastash Ridge is huge, and um, back then, even back then when we first went on that trailhead, at that time the hole might have been covered over because, again, Mal mentioned that there was yellow gear on his property, and um, the military had taken it over and such. But what we find out is, again, researching the area, that is that ridge is Manastash Ridge. There's Manastash Road, again, very large, kind of remote area, very underdeveloped. So you're out there hiking on either Department of Natural Resources line or very kind of remote, what I call more camping lots that maybe people had private property. Um, so Red Elk was pretty interesting, and I guess what I'm trying to say is we're always kind of skeptical. It's like, okay, we're very um, just kind of factual. And again, you may be able to explain some of the unusual things by, um, say, the black beam that comes out of the hole. I always kind of thought maybe that's just gas, like radon gas, that's just deflecting
Hmm.
light. That might be explainable, right? But and again, we're in a researchers always want hard facts.
Sure.
What I will tell you that it's after that first meeting, we started to take him seriously. Despite all everything that he was saying, because we recalled him mentioning that there was going to be an earthquake,
Oh, okay.
and I my first reaction was, as you know, not even our best geologists can predict earthquakes. Okay, you might
Right.
get
Right.
clusters of earthquakes, but it's like, hey, that's a pretty pointed prediction. Okay,
Yeah.
so but I noted that, and it was like, okay, he was talking about long walkers, about tunnels that the hole connected to Mount Rainier, and maybe our volcanic venting system. I don't know. It was talking all this, the legends. Okay,
Sure. Yeah.
and Red Elk. My understanding is his background is Native American Blackfoot, and again he was saying some pretty, you know, far out things. To be quite frank, it was like, oh, we were like skeptical. It's like, okay, but we'll take
Sure.
note.
Because you guys, you're doing research out here, and to hear, I think anyone who is a researcher, you want facts, as you were saying earlier,
Mhm.
and when you start to hear legends, when you start to hear tales or these stories that are told that may have some type of lean to them, or there's no research behind them, they're just stories that are being either passed down through to him, that he's been heard, that he
Mhm.
heard.
Yeah.
So then yes, it does become, you're like, okay, noted, but you're like, you're still looking for you're trying to weed through what is being told to get the facts out of what is of this stories, or these shared, legendary
Yeah.
stories.
Now, what amazed us was 10 days later, we had the 2001 Nisqually earthquake.
Oh,
Hmm. Yepper. I forget what magnitude that was. Was it
That was
6.1 or
6.
something? Yeah.
That was a good one. That one was like,
And again, I from what we picked up and from what I can surmise, Red Elk is a bit of a sensitive. Okay, he claimed to know of and have knowledge of
6'8".
the people or the creatures down in that hole that were watching us, and he didn't think the long walkers were very friendly.
When you say when
Hmm?
you let's go back to long walkers. When you talk about long walkers, are we talking like Sasquatch, Bigfoot long walkers, or are we talking about something completely different?
Completely different. It's the first time I have ever heard that description or term or creature. I couldn't tell you what. I mean, I'd have to. Uh, gosh. All we know that there were. He was picking up on maybe something. Entities down in the hole
He
that
said in
live.
general there were people that lived underground, and they were called long walkers, and they were kind of dangerous.
So, like a society underneath the surface of this, well, living within Mel's Hole or
No,
wherever.
not just Mel's Hole, but underground in general.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
and that's what you're talking about, different paths that go to. So probably like cities underneath the ground, I guess, right?
Right. Right.
Well, again, there's I would say there's a lot of belief systems and things, and I believe even Red Elk had a comment about the creature that supposedly came out of the Nevada hole, the seal. Um, and that was interesting because again, he was just kind of he knew, and there wasn't any question. And that's what was interesting about Red Elk. So I do got to sit there and say after that first day, and we weren't asking, we were asking him any for any information or stories or anything like that, but I think he kind of knew we needed some information, that he is almost, let's say, a psychic sensitive or someone who's picking up information from the earth. I think
Sure.
he was more intuitive about what about nature and about what was going on maybe in that area. And yeah.
It's interesting when you talk about this, and the people to hear this type of information, even for myself. Um, when you share this story, I do recall seeing Red Elk on film somewhere,
Mhm.
sharing these stories that you are now sharing with us again. Uh, um, it gives me chills to think that there could be possible life forms or even long walkers. Is that right?
And to me it's
Long,
scary. I
uh,
mean,
I mean, when we go to sleep, I mean, who knows? This is interesting to think about this because I'm starting to, like, of all the interviews I've ever done since 2020 began,
mhm.
and the when we talk about walkers here, the thing that comes straight to my mind is the Sierra Sounds from why can't I think of the gentleman's name? Ron Moorhead, who was a Bigfoot, did Bigfoot research back in the day, and he has these sounds of these. To me, it sounded like, if anyone's ever watched cartoons, I mean, most people who are listening to radio these days had watched cartoons back in the day. But the Looney Tunes character of the Tasmanian Devil is what the
Okay.
sound of the Sierra Sound sounded like to me. And I wasn't trying to offend him, but this is what is close to me as what it sounded like. So I related the sound to the cartoon of the Tasmanian Devil. Um, and that was the noise that he recorded. Interesting. I was like, long walkers. I wonder if the long walkers were, could this have been part of their, oh yeah. You have a
That's a
picture.
photo. Yeah. photo
Yeah,
of Red Elk.
unfortunately, he passed away in 2015.
Oh,
Red Elk,
yeah, Red Elk, yeah,
but he was on Art Bell quite a bit too, actually.
yeah. You know, when we talk about these legends and these stories that you've even heard, and to go back through, and the big stigma to me is the word conspiracy. I think during the 2020 pandemic really took off to be almost like a bad word, you know, and I don't know. This definitely is not a conspiracy, but the phenomenon to me of this mysterious hole of what could actually be down there. What does the government know? Does the government know anything? Is the land was what was the land usage back? Hey, do you
Um,
have any of those
yeah.
other than the
Well, what I can tell you is, anybody who may be familiar with Central Washington, I think even Art Bell knew the area because he seemed to recognize the area code 509. Um, Art Bell was in the military, himself, but there is the Yakima firing range, which is just located just south of the ridge. And
okay?
that's a lot of people don't know that it's a military base. It's a military firing range, and so for military to maybe doing exercises or make some claims, was the so-called Mel's Hole, did that maybe connect to some underground military base venting or a project that they wanted to kind of hide and be a little more discreet about? We don't know, but again, military was right there, um, and so I find that very interesting.
It's interesting you say that this was that area. There's so much that that area either being agricultural in that general area, cattle, obviously, which I just covered. God, the
Mhm.
thing, and to people doing some farming, college town, military installation. But the phenomenon of the whole that even that he talked about this mystery that has been going on since probably
Mhm.
prior to '97 when he actually went onto Art Bell's show. Um,
I can't believe it's 27 years. It's been 27 years.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
know. I mean, that's. I mean, that makes me feel old because that's when I graduated high school. I mean, which is crazy to me to think that that was such a long time ago. Um,
That's a photo of Philip with my dog.
Now, were you guys out? This was at Mel in that general area. Is
And
that
yeah,
Yeah,
we've been to Manastash Ridge 4 times.
we had
Yeah.
an expedition. About 20 people actually went out there.
Yeah.
I ran a library at that time, and we met at the library and went out there.
what's interesting because a lot of that area now. I'm trying to think of the town prior to Cleellum, which is they turned all that Cleellum area into like this little resort town, and they have some people can kind of hang out, but that's kind of still in that general area,
Mhm.
right? Just east
Yeah,
of
it's real Twin Peaks, real just a big contrast because here it is, you have your good old country rodeo town next to, um uh, uh, Central Washington University, and it's quite a contrast, but it's Ellensburg is still a small town, um just kind of quiet, I think. um I don't think it has a huge history, and other than the rare agate and I think some uh, technology developments over there, there's it still kind of has that sense of a feel of a small town. Yeah.
I was just looking to see what the distance between Mel's Hole and Cleellum was, and um, it's interesting because I mean I like Cleellum, but then there's Roslyn, which is further up from Cleellum,
Mhm.
and that still kind of has that same feel to it as well, that Twin Peaksy
Right.
feel.
Mhm.
Also, with Chehalis, they found crop circles, so that's another interesting connection.
Yeah, it's interesting because you don't really hear about crop circles anymore.
Mm-mm.
Not too much.
No, which is interesting to me. I was like, hey, whatever happened to those? Like, it's like the fad went away. It's like, no, we don't. No one wants to do that anymore. It's too much time consuming. There's so many other things that we can record and do, and do research on. And if it's, I mean, the only time you think of crop circles now is like if Mayor's Farms, and you're like, oh, that's pretty good that they were able to design this whole like themed whatever flyer that's within the maze of the corn that the whole flyer is now in their whatever. So shout out to those guys. Not that they're paying us or anything, but very creative of the farm to be able to pull that off. And because obviously no one's doing crop circles anymore. But as we get close to wrapping things up, is there something that if a takeaway that you guys could share with us before you guys leave?
There's we're this whole mystery is becoming very popular. It's kind of getting a resurrection. Apparently, if you go on YouTube or TikTok, again, it might be attributed to the new Amazon Prime movie, Outer Range. We've been getting quite a few calls, even from um, Japan, believe it or
Wow.
not. What I recommend, and to you and your listeners, if you get a chance, look up artbellfiles.org. They have the complete. I commend them. They have the complete transcripts, and we ourselves are even pulling up our old files and the emails, the few emails that we got from Mel and his nephew, and re-looking at this. I got to tell you, this is a mystery you can really sink your teeth into. Yeah.
We'll have the link of the audio from the original broadcast
Okay.
from Mel's hole. The website is actually melshole.org. We'll have the audio linked in the podcast and the YouTube stream. So if you're you get to hang out and watch the show and the stream, we'll have the audio available to you there if you'd like to watch or listen to the old broadcast. It's funny when we talk that type of show. It really, someone busted my hump the other day, and we're trying to do as much as we possibly can. And if someone has something, I always tell them, email me, mario@onairmario.com. I may not get to it right away, but we'd love to hear your show ideas. Maybe there's a show that you want us to do, like suggested here, to do the Mel's Hole. Again, I can't thank you guys enough. I wish the stuff that you guys do, and when you guys get closer to Halloween time, if you guys do anything, we'd love to have you guys come back in, because I know you guys were talking about haunts and stuff like that. Now, you still do those? Do you guys still do any of
We
those?
we still do ghost tours.
Yeah.
We love history and connecting with community, and I love research. But Mario, your listeners ever thinking of going out to Ellensburg and doing an expedition search for Mel's Hole?
I mean, I'm sure someone wants to. I don't know that. Here's the thing about me. I need to go out more. I was like, oh, this might be a good one to go do.
Yeah.
To take the camera. I have a drone now, so I bought it.
Oh,
I bought a fancy drone that because I can't hire a cameraman or camera person. I was gonna have the drone follow me through. Like, my first experiment was to go through the haunted Pike Place Market and have the drone follow me and kind of give that Robert Mack feel to it, minus the coat, the and kind of do the walk and talk like he did for the Unsolved Mystery stuff. But when it came to do these types of show, I really rely on like people like such as yourself who are out there, boots on ground, to share these stories with us, because there are people who are quite fascinated by this, who are afraid to go out. I figured it was my job to get people like yourselves to come on the show to share what you have, what you've learned, what inspired you to do these things, then to, to ask a question that someone who may be hanging out with us this evening might say, ooh, that's a good question. I wanted to ask that one, and that's really what this show was really premised. Obviously, big fan of Art Bell. I'm not selling. The one thing that we don't do is we don't sell snake oil because, we're not selling any medicinal things and things of that nature, and not to knock any of the others, but that's not what the show was about. And that's not what this show would about. I'm not here to sell snake. I want to discover. I want to know what it is about Mel's Hole. I want to know what it is about DB Cooper. These other stories, the Bigfoot. Why haven't we found him? These burning questions that are asked, as you talked about, as we get close to ending. Prior, you just talking about these people living the long man or whatever what they were called,
long walkers.
These long walkers. These things freak me out, as they should, but these are great legendary stories told by Red Elk that aren't available always to the average individual who may be going down the so-called wormhole, not to, and maybe we'll just call it the Mel's Hole to discover. But they might not hear these stories about Red Elk because the vision of how they get through this wormhole to learn about Mel's Hole may not have these side stories that branch out to what the research of what you guys have done. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to hang out with us, to share those insights with us, because look, I don't always share it anymore. We're talking about almost a 30-year-old, discovery that was brought to the forefront on a show that I even listened to back in the day. So,
by the way, we do the Brazilian UFO Festival every year too. That's usually in August.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's coming up. We're gonna have to have you guys come back on so you guys can promote it here on the show. So as we get closer, we'll have you guys come on like June. Well, we got to promote that. And like I said, local. As I always tell everyone, my goal was for 2024 was to promote local and to help support people like your guys' self, to promote and put the word out and say, hey, look, if you're looking for a cool, that's one, my daughter and I will come out to, and if she's not with me, then I'm coming to hang out. And if you guys need me to do anything, I'll volunteer to do whatever. If it's pass out flyers or, yell in the microphone, I'll do that as well. But again, it's always a pleasure to have you both on, Charlotte. Again, their website is nwlegendsmuseum.com. It'll be linked in the podcast as well as the YouTube video that'll come out. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with us this evening. As we conclude this show tonight, the voyage of the voyage into the extraordinary, I want to express my deepest gratitudes to you, the listeners of US Phenomenon. Your unwavering curiosity, passion for the unknown marks this journey through the cosmos and the corner of our reality possible. To my daughter, the beacon of inspiration and joy of my life, thank you for reminding me every day that the greatest mysteries are not just out there in this vast universe, but also in our loving hearts of our home. As your host, Mario, I leave you with this thought. Keep your eyes gazed fixed to the stars and mind open to the possibilities that may question we've pondered tonight. Spark conversation and inspire dreams, and remind us that we all are part of the grand mysterious phenomenon. Good night, and remember, the adventure never ends. It only transforms. Until next time. Keep your eye, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the spirit of discovery alive. Good night.